Welcome to She Sells Radio. So excited for today's conversation. And, I was recently doing an audit of our most popular topics on the podcast and just really digging in to see, like, what do you want to hear more about? And I wasn't surprised that it seems like overall for our listeners, the top rated topic is around mindset and abundance. But the second one was about prospecting and lead generation, specifically on LinkedIn. And so today I am super excited because I get to bring you someone who I think embodies expertise in both of those areas, both from the mindset and abundance space, as well as just pro ninja level LinkedIn lead generation tips. So I want to share with you a little bit about my guest today and then go ahead and tee him up. Niraj Kapur is a really incredible human being who I've met over this past year through the Salesforce Top Influencer Program. And I would say he's one of the best in the industry at coaching and training on LinkedIn. So I want to share with you just a bit of his professional bio, and then we're going to dive into the conversation for today. After 23 years in London running sales teams, Niraj wanted to raise the standards of sales, which I love. So he wrote Everybody Works in Sales, which became an Amazon international bestseller. He then set up his own sales coaching and training company to keep businesses accountable to help them achieve results. He's delivered LinkedIn training and sales coaching to over 400 small businesses and solopreneurs. In May of 2022, Niraj was announced as a top sales influencer in the world to follow by Salesforce. He's also a top LinkedIn voice in sales to follow by LinkedIn. And just because this is fun, in his free time, Niraj plays drums in a rock band and raises money for charities like Movember. So Niraj, welcome to She Sells Radio. I'm so glad to have you here today.
No, thank you so much for having me, Elyse. And thank you also for that fantastic introduction. Seriously, people often, when they go on stage, have music pumping. I'm just going to have your voice speaking about me. It's so much better,
Hey, we all need a pump up sometime. I need one sometimes.
Forget AC/DC Thunderstruck. That's gone now. This is Elyse.
Right? Well, I know sometimes when we get on our Salesforce call, you've got the AC/DC shirt on, which I love about you. Different vibe today, which I also love. But I think it just shows, part of what we're going to talk about today too, which is how you can bring your true self to what you're doing on social media, specifically with LinkedIn and just sharing. And, I know, Niraj, you've got a really powerful personal story, which I think for today, because you've talked about it so much online, right? So we're not going to go too deep into. So anything you want to share about your background that's helpful for the audience, I'd love to, of course, have you weave that in. But I also was just doing some Googling ahead of time. And I was like, if someone wants to know his personal story, I think they can pretty much Google you, right, at this point, and here's some other interviews that you've done. So with that, let's dive into the conversation today. And I want to really, I want to hone in on LinkedIn specifically. And here's what I think is super compelling. So again, it's like anyone can call themselves a LinkedIn expert, right? But in 2021, LinkedIn awarded only 10 people in the world a top voice in sales, and you were one of them. And I know you've used LinkedIn to grow your audience by 300%. You've doubled your revenue by 200%. And you've done it in, from what I can see outside looking in, a way that really aligns with what we believe in and appreciate in this community, which is that abundance mindset, like paying it forward, sharing your truth, sharing more of your personal brand. So I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation to talk about today. So anything before, I've got some specific questions for you on LinkedIn, but before we dive in, is there anything specific you want to share about your background or kind of what got you to this point? I know we talked about the process of building your brand on LinkedIn, and that might be something interesting just to kind of tee up for people who maybe don't have any context, but I'll give you space to share what you want to share there.
A lot of people, when they're on LinkedIn, have a fear that they don't have enough knowledge about LinkedIn. Or who am I to talk about LinkedIn? A lot of people say, well, I don't have much knowledge. What do we talk about? And it's very important to understand that I spent my life working in sales. And I spent my life as a sales trainer. And until 2020, I was a nobody on LinkedIn. It's very important to remember that. I had like 1,000 followers. I was a nobody, just an everyday person trying to make LinkedIn work.
I just want to pause for 1 second on that in case anybody didn't hear that. In 2021, you're awarded a top sales voice award by LinkedIn. A year following what you just shared, which was
It was 18 months. Yeah, it was
18
January
months. Yeah,
2020 started properly.
got
And
it.
it was November-ish, October, November 2021 when I got that award. So within 18 months, I turned it around very quickly.
That's remarkable. So no matter where somebody is when they're listening today, even if they're like, I feel so far behind, or I don't have a lot of followers, what I'm hearing from you is if you're intentional and if you implement what I know we're going to talk about today, you can really make some headway and some progress.
It's very important your listeners know you can do this, because I do not have ridiculously high levels of EQ. I do not have a degree. I am not the world's, I'm a good learner. I'm not the fastest learner. I do not work 18 hours a day or even 16 hours a day. I do not sleep 4 hours a night. I sleep 8 hours a night. You know, to do what I did is going to sound really boring, but so much of it is just consistency and showing up. Most people give up so quickly. And on LinkedIn and in business and in sales, you can't do that. You have to show up, especially when you don't feel like it. You know, today's a national holiday in England, in the UK. I'm based in England. It's a national holiday. Most people aren't working. But I showed up today. I started work at 7:30 this morning as usual. I went for a morning walk as usual. I did learning for half an hour as usual, did a LinkedIn post as usual, spent 1 hour planning and thinking as usual, spent 1 hour doing charity work as usual. Every day I show up and I have a schedule for the day. And it's all about making the world better or about making me better.
I love that. I love that so much. That's something that we teach a lot about, the power of routine. And a lot of times clients will ask me like, well, do you meditate on the weekends, or do you work out on the weekends? And it's like, it's a day. I only do it if I want to feel good that day, right? Like, it doesn't really matter what day it is. So already I think someone can listen and start to just hear that mindset of consistency, but not hustle, which I very much align with and appreciate as well. So take us to, I think what would be interesting would be to start and look at that journey, that 18-month journey of what you were doing, because I think we'll be able to pull some really tangible takeaways that we can start implementing in our own LinkedIn routine, where you went from 1,000 followers, hadn't built a big brand, to now, in 18 months, one of LinkedIn's top sales voices. So what did that journey look like for you?
The journey was very simple. I was a sales trainer. I was sharing sales tips, maybe selling a bit more than what I should have been, but trying to sell sales tips and get work through LinkedIn. And I had a decent business. It was breaking even, making some profit, but not a huge amount. And then once lockdown happened, within 48 hours, all my clients canceled for the year. My revenue went to zero. And I think because I had a mortgage to pay, and because my daughter was in her second year of university, I panicked, because I'm like, how do I pay the bills? And how do I help my child out? That's what you're concerned about as a business owner and as a parent.
Right.
And I didn't have an answer, because my business was only 2 years old at the time. And now, even though I'm only almost 5 years to my business, I feel so much more experienced. I feel like I've been doing this forever.
Yeah. It's kind of like dog years, right? In entrepreneur times.
When you're 2 years in, you feel like I'm such a newbie. I know nothing. Now it's only 5 years. Like, I know so much.
I'm a pro.
The difference.
Yep.
And so my clients said, we have no money. And I really panicked. And I wrote my second book in lockdown, which protected me for about 2 months and gave me some revenue, but it wasn't enough long term. And then after a few months, my clients approached me saying, look, we have no money for sales training, but can you do LinkedIn?
Interesting.
And I'm like, of course I can. So I hired Daniel Disney, of course. I think you and I both, Daniel. I hired him. He did a lot of work with me. I did his course. I read his books. I read every LinkedIn book there was going. And I called everybody I knew running a networking event saying, look, right now times are very challenging. I want to teach your delegates virtually how to use LinkedIn. And I would give 5-minute talks, 10-minute talks, 15-minute talks. I must have given about, I've lost count, 45, 50 talks free of charge. Wow. But what I was doing was I was building my craft. I know how to speak publicly. I've done that already. But speaking about a brand new subject is much more tricky. And I think when you do anything new, Elyse, it's very important to understand you're starting at the bottom. Don't go in with this. I didn't go in with this attitude that I'm a sales trainer, I shouldn't be doing this, or I know everything. I literally knew nothing. I started at the very beginning. And you make mistakes. Luckily, because I knew how to speak, I got away with a lot. I know how to present on camera. I know how to raise my voice. I understand tone. Being a public speaker helped massively, of course.
Sure.
At the same time, you're teaching something new for the first time. And the one thing I learned was when you're working with anybody, you must have calls to action, whether it's a networking event, whether it's a virtual talk, or whether it's a live conference. And when you give people action points and things to do at the end of your talk, I find they learn so much more. And
Hmm.
learning leads to progress, leads to results. And that's what I'm all about.
Right, right. So one thing I want to just, gosh, there's a lot I'd love to pull out of that, but one thing that I'm really getting from what you said is just that willingness to almost humble yourself and say, I mean, I'm putting myself in your shoes, and it's like in 48 hours going from successful sales coaching business to suddenly no clients, which I can only imagine, what that was like. But then your willingness to say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start again, and I'm going to have a beginner's mindset if I need to. And that's something we talk about and teach just from like a mindset and more of like a spiritual principle here in the community, is that in every hardship, there's an equal and opposite blessing. Now, you may not see at the time what that blessing is. Often you don't, but it's interesting to hear your story and say, I know a lot of people would probably have thrown in the towel. And instead you said, let me, like I said, like humble myself, right, and start again here. And then to see the blessing that has come out of that, right, that you're still creating and still, um, and still manifesting is pretty powerful. So, all right. So going out, gave 45, 50 free talks, built your brand consistently. So somebody can be thinking about that maybe and think like, what audience could I get in front of? Who can I go out and speak, even if it's for free, to start and share anything else during that time that you think really made a big difference for you in terms of building the brand you have now on LinkedIn?
The biggest difference, without a doubt, because at the time I was sharing things that were helpful to people, no doubt about it. But it wasn't really that much different to what other LinkedIn coaches were talking about. There was nothing really to separate me. And one of the best lessons I learned was the importance of being different to your competition and standing out. Not
Mm.
enough people think about that. I'm not just talking about LinkedIn or sales. I'm talking about whatever industry you work in. One of the most important things to do is stand out. And I stood out by default because at the time I'd gone through, I'd just been through a very painful divorce before lockdown. And so I was trying to do online dating. And so
Mm.
I was writing about my online dating experiences quite a bit. And 2 years ago, LinkedIn was a platform people really didn't use that much for personal stories. Now, of course, so many people use it for personal stories and selfies, but 2 years ago, not that many people were. And you would have pictures of me at a restaurant, and the table opposite was empty, saying,
Mm.
"I stood up again." It's a horrible feeling. It's just awful. But you know what? In business, sometimes you turn up and the clients don't turn up either, and they don't give you a reason why. And it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you react. So I would take my
Oh.
personal pain, and most of the time, I would try and turn it into a business story. In some cases, I just couldn't. And in some cases, I would just say, you know what, loneliness is horrible. And
Mm.
it's so difficult when you're post-divorce, you're a man in his late 40s, especially a man of color in his late 40s. The few people in my life who I thought were my best friends weren't. They were my wife's friends, and I realized that
Sure.
I had nothing, and you kind of feel like you're really alone in the world. And what happened was, through the power of vulnerability and talking about my personal story, all of a sudden I went from having 1,000 to 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to having a massive number of followers
Wow.
who were interested in what I had to say, because I wasn't just sharing LinkedIn tips anymore. I was sharing my personal story and how that relates to sales or business or LinkedIn.
Mm.
And what had happened was, after about a year and a half of doing that, and during that year and a half, I went from being stood up to getting rejected on dates to finally leaving London. I worked in London 25 years, and I considered that my home. But what had happened was the struggle of lockdown, the struggle of online dating. It had just kind of beaten me in life. Every time I've been beaten, I've always found the strength to come back. I've
Yeah.
always had the energy to come back. It might take a few days, might even take a few weeks, but I always have that resilience. And this was the first time I just wasn't coping.
Mm.
And my parents were amazing. My parents are based in Ireland, and they said, you know what? Put everything you own in storage, come back home for 3 months and recover. And at the time, obviously now I realize how lucky I was, but at the time I felt really ashamed. I'm a coach and I can't even take care of myself. I have to go to my
Mm.
retired
Mm.
parents. It was really humiliating. And again, I wrote about that on LinkedIn, and so many people came forward saying, hey, don't worry. We got divorced. I had to go live with my parents again in my 40s. And people were so
Wow.
supportive and so kind. And because I humanize myself by not just talking about business, but sharing my personal story and my personal struggle in a world of social media where people spend so much time bragging and exaggerating. It made me the real deal. And that's when my following took off. And that's when my business took off, because I distinguished myself from other coaches by sharing my personal story.
It's such a, gosh, I mean, it's like, to hear you say that, I think someone could hear and say, okay, I can see how that happens. Right. And yet there's also so much fear for most people around being vulnerable and dropping the ego. And was that, I guess, what sort of mindset tip would you give to somebody? Because sometimes people will say too, like, teach from, when I say teach from the scar, not from the wound. So there's different approaches to do this. And obviously yours has worked tremendously. If someone is afraid to share something that's going on for them right now, for fear of, I'm going to lose clients, or I'm not going to look a certain way, like, what would you say to them?
Oh, very simple. Nobody is judging you as much as you're judging yourself.
Oh,
That's it.
wow.
Nobody is sitting there on LinkedIn going, I can't believe. People are dealing with their own stuff. They're not sitting there judging you, even though you
So
think
true.
they are. There might be a few people that do, might be a few jealous competitors. The bigger you get, the more haters, unfortunately, you're going to attract. But generally speaking, most people aren't sitting there going, let's follow Niraj's life. They're really not. They're trying to deal with their own stuff. That they'll follow my content, but they're not sitting there judging me. And also, of course, now it's easy for me to say that because I have the confidence now that I maybe didn't have 2 years ago. And of course, there is a certain naivety to what I was doing because I didn't know any better. And quite often in life, when you don't know any better, you just do it.
And that's often when it works out, right?
When you know too much, sometimes you just don't take a risk,
Yeah. Wow. Well, it ties in. So I thank you for sharing that, because I think it gives someone context for your journey. And I think it also humanizes the process, which I really appreciate. And you talk about this on your website. So everybodyworksinsales.com, someone can go and check out your site, and you've got a really great section on LinkedIn tips. And one of the things you say there, because I want to kind of talk a little bit about moving into this year, what should somebody be thinking about for LinkedIn? But you say, look at what your competition is doing and do the opposite. So can you speak a little bit more to that? Because I think you spoke to that a bit there, but give us a little bit more context for what that means.
Certainly. It's important to be aware of the competition, of course. That's very important. And look at what they're doing. So I looked at what I was doing, what my competition were doing. So I was telling personal stories, and back then, my competition weren't. I was doing video, and back then, my competition weren't doing video. I was told to do video once a week. I hesitated because of my age, and anybody listening, the lack of my follicle hairs in my head, or because my large nose, or the fact I have ears like Dumbo. I'm the last person. I can't imagine why anybody want to see my face in the camera. I just don't. And so, I did hesitate, but none of my competition were doing video. And I did, but not just video. On LinkedIn, over 60% of people watch video with the sound off, which means you need subtitles. And any of my competitions who were trying to copy me, none of them were using subtitles. I was. So again, it's about standing out. Charity work and philanthropy is a big part of my life. And so I spoke about the charities I support, and I say, it doesn't matter how difficult your life is, never stop giving to others. And I do a November fundraiser every year. Every November I spend most of it raising money for good causes, in November especially. And I put my ridiculous mustache on LinkedIn and social media. My competition don't do that. None of my competition. So again, they don't do it. I will. They don't talk about personal stories. I will. They don't do video. I will. Doing videos on LinkedIn is one of the best ways to generate leads, because it makes you a person of authority.
Are you seeing, so I'm really curious, just to know what you're seeing. So as we record this, like you said, it's actually a holiday. It's January 2nd, and this will air, likely it'll probably be sometime in March. So it's going to be a little bit later, but we're still going to be relatively early in 2023 as this comes out. So what are you seeing with video on LinkedIn right now as we go into this year? So is it better to do a live? Is it better to do pre-recorded? Like, what should we be thinking about if we're going to be doing video content?
Video clips are vital. People rarely have time to take 30 to 60 minutes out of their day to watch LinkedIn Live. They just don't have the time. If obviously someone's a close friend of yours, or potentially a client might watch it. But even my closest friends, I don't watch the LinkedIn Lives live because I'm running a business. I'll
Right.
maybe watch it in the evening. I'll watch reruns as opposed to live. But even then, I really have to like you to do it because
Yeah.
it's my time. So, up until about a few months ago, watching a 90-second clip was fine. Now it's come down to 60 seconds. So again, a good 60-second clip is all you need. And
Mm,
you can say, look, if you want to watch the full video, here's a link. But 60 seconds is what people have. It's very difficult getting people's attention span. And it's getting tougher and tougher because people are distracted from every single medium, as I'm sure you know.
mm,
So do a good 60-second video clip. Make sure you have subtitles. That is very, very important because people are watching it in transport, in coffee shops, in an office, in many cases when the kids are sleeping. So
mm.
it's important to have subtitles.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Got it. And so with I know one of the things you teach too is just consistency is key, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming consistency in all areas, including posting. I'd love to hear a little bit more about just what consistency looks like for you, but I'd love to first say on the video front, so someone's like, okay, great, 60-second videos. I get it. Everyone has a short attention span these days. So it makes perfect sense. For you, is that a once a week type of thing? Is that daily? How do those shorter videos work within your overall content mix?
It's really important on LinkedIn to vary what you're posting. So one day a
Mm,
week, I'll do a video
okay.
because it doesn't get as much engagement as other posts, but it's where I get my leads from most of the time. One day a week, I'll do a PDF document. So
Hmm.
today's PDF document is simply about routines and habits and how to have a great day, because that's really important to a lot of people. One day a week, I'll do a text only post
Mm,
where I'll share some valuable tips on sales. One day a week, I'll do a personal post. On the first day of each month, people look forward to my post called Wins and Losses. So on the 1st of
mm.
January, I spoke about December. In December, I went to London to see my LinkedIn connections. That's how far I will get on a plane just to go hug and see people because
Wow.
those relationships are important. Then I'll say something personal, like my daughter came over from England to see me and we did a Game of Thrones tour. There's a picture of us at the Dark Hedges because I'm a big Game of Thrones fan and so is
Mm.
she. I will talk about how 8 fitness coaches all sent me the exact same copy and paste message in the exact same format. Please don't do this. It's awful. And I'll say
Oh man.
positive, and I'll say something like, don't send me a generic LinkedIn invite. I get them all day long and I reject them. If you want to stand out, send me a personalized invite.
Yeah.
A personalized invite isn't, we both live in Europe, so do I, let's connect. Personalized invite is, I saw your post, I saw you talk about this, it really resonated with me. Simply saying you like my content is irrelevant to me because anybody can say that. It doesn't make you interesting or
Mm,
special. When I connect with people, I only send 1 or 2 invites a day at the most now.
mm,
But even then, when I do that, it's very specific. I'll look at somebody's
mm.
profile. I will check out their website. I will think, how can I give value to this person? Who is this person? What do they do? How do they work? What do they achieve? I spend time really thinking about anybody before I connect with them. And that's what everybody should do before they do business. Most people don't make the effort. So again, if you want to stand out, simply make the effort. It isn't difficult, by the way. Nothing I'm teaching you here is complicated. And it's very important you understand that.
Hmm. I want to ask a question about that. So the outreach piece. So I read Daniel's book too, and I think I've recommended it to just some clients. I think everyone has different approaches here, right? So I think if I'm remembering correctly, part of the strategy there is like 25 outbound connection requests a day when you're first building. And what I'm hearing you say, which I resonate with quite a bit, because I know if I get a copy and paste invite message, it's like, I'm not gonna accept it. You're doing it more intentionally with that 1 to 2 highly curated ones. When you were really building, were you doing highly curated 25 invitations a
Oh,
day
no,
to
not
grow
as
and
much as that.
build, or what did that look like for you?
It depends. Look, if you want to scale your business to 7 figures or 8 figures a year, absolutely fine. My goal isn't to go to 7 figures a year. Sorry, it
Mm,
is to go to 6 a year.
sure.
But again, it's not even a high 6 a year because don't forget, before I was divorced, I had the English country house. I had a beautiful sports
Mm,
car. My wife had a great sports car. We had first class holidays. We lived what I would call a life of luxury. Okay, it took us almost 18 years of marriage to get there. I want to make that very clear.
yeah.
I don't it took us such a long time to get there. And when we got there, the first month is lovely. Don't get me wrong. When you first achieve that kind of financial success, it is wonderful. But then after a month, it's like, this is really not what I was expecting. And it was disappointing, and it really shocked and surprised me how disappointing it was, because she grew up in poverty in India. So for her, having an English country house meant everything. I grew up in a middle class home in Ireland where most of the houses are big anyway, because it's so much cheaper
Yeah.
in England. So for me, having a big property, it was lovely, but it just didn't mean that much to me. But it meant everything to her. We ended up just working day and night to pay a big house and bills. And by the end of the month, we had no money left. I'm like, I don't like this. And so many of my neighbors, went on skiing holidays, and so many of my neighbors either inherited money or married into money. So for them, it wasn't that big a deal. But for us, we were killing ourselves day and night just to get by. I didn't like that. Having the big home didn't mean to me what I really thought it would. And I realized we made a big mistake by doing that. But the problem is you have this lovely life you don't want to give up. And so what happens is, really slowly cracks start appearing, but they're so small you just don't see them. And they get slightly bigger and you ignore them and think, oh, I'll just work through it. And then what happens is the cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger. And our daughter went to university, and then the marriage pretty much ended. And we did try. We had date nights. We tried to keep it alive. We ended up having a last minute holiday to India, thinking, let's try and save this. And we fought day and night because we knew it was over. And it was really heartbreaking how it ended. And it really was. But I think it's important to mention that, because a lot of people, especially young people, when they get into sales or business, they see the fancy pictures on Instagram and they get carried away. And they think, don't get me wrong, I've made those mistakes myself. I've been to become a millionaire in a weekend courses. I have been manifest your dream 7-figure income. I've done all these things, so I know what they're all about. And unfortunately, if you want to be successful now, first of all, people vastly underestimate, Elyse, how much hard work they have to put in. You will rarely achieve anything great in life working 9 to 5. I'm sorry, you just won't. And the second thing is, don't make money your number one goal. Make living a life of purpose. Take this from a guy who's really messed up his past and been lucky enough to come back strong. Most men at my age that I've now met in the last few years have got an addiction to drugs. I'm talking prescription drugs, or an addiction to alcohol, and they may never get better. And I was lucky enough to get out of that because of my mindset, because of my Tony Robbins events I've been to, because of my determination, my personal development. I surround myself with very good people, my desire to be a good father. And I think a bit of luck that my parents are still alive and they're great role models to me. So I got a bit lucky, but most people don't. So please don't make the desire of money the number one thing of running a business or working for somebody else. Money is very important, of course, but do not make it the most important thing. Make fulfillment and purpose the most important thing. And the money, to your surprise, will come along.
I love that you brought that up, Niraj, because I think, so many members of our community, they do come because they desire greater financial abundance. And so kind of my specialty is I help women get to 6, multi-6 and 7 figures in terms of revenue. But to your point, and have you ever read the book Prosper by Randy Garn and Ethan Willis?
I haven't. So Prosper by
Randy Garn, and then Ethan Willis. I was introduced to Randy recently, and I was reading it this morning, and what you're saying just reminds me so much of the book, which is about what is true prosperity for you, right? Because I think when it's not coming from a grounded place, and I know I've had my own money journey too, where there's definitely a time that was all about like the money grab. And if I can just make this amount, then I'll feel successful. Then I'll feel happy. And what I realized for me was it was really about validation, and I didn't feel good enough. And so I thought if I can just make a certain amount, then I'll feel good enough about myself. But the problem was it was never enough. And so to your point, like really knowing what is true success for me, what is true prosperity for me. And that's not just financial, right? That's also emotional happiness, quality of life. Like you talked about going out for a walk this morning, and you're going to shut down for the day after this interview. And I just think it's important. I guess what I'm taking from what you said is you could probably go out and send, well, I don't know if LinkedIn would let you do this. You could send 100 connection requests in a day. Probably not because of
It
LinkedIn,
won't let
right?
you do that, but I get
Won't
your
let you
point.
do that. But knowing like, what is my personal target? Not because I read this in a book, not because someone else is doing it and it's what I think I should do, but what's important for me and what feels most aligned as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and don't get me wrong, it takes time finding that. You can't just, not everybody knows exactly what their purpose is in life or what
Yeah.
their meaning is in life. And if they're ever unsure, I always say to people, look, it's a really simple exercise. Write down, get a piece of paper and put a line in the middle. On the left-hand side, write down 5 things that make you incredibly happy.
Mm.
And on the right-hand side, work out how you're going to monetize it because that's important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often by doing these exercises, you'll find out what you want. Now, for me, people say, you're a sales trainer, do you help people with sales? And I said, yes, but really what I do is I serve people. And it's a very different answer because when I meet people, a prospecting client about a deal, I'm not thinking I must close this deal, I must smash this deal, I must win this client. I think I must really serve this client and give them as much value as I possibly can. It's a very different attitude. And when you go in with the attitude of trying to help other people, it makes the whole business process so much more enjoyable as well. It really does.
Yeah, gosh, which is, it speaks to something that I wanted to talk with you about here. And I think, gosh, there's so much I want to talk with you about when it comes to both mindset and LinkedIn. I got to be mindful of our time, but so let's do this. I want to talk one more tactical piece for LinkedIn moving into 2023. And then I want to talk about the mindset piece for a moment, before we wrap, if that's cool with you.
Sure.
So moving into this year, and again, we'll probably be a few months into the year when people are listening, but is there anything else that you're focused on this year with LinkedIn specifically? Anything that you think is different or new, or just something we should be focused on if we're wanting to grow our brands and our platforms there?
So be consistent, vary your content. And one of the most important things you can do when it comes to sales, especially outbound, is to leverage LinkedIn video and LinkedIn voice notes. Now, what I mean by that is I've been doing voice notes for over a year now. And I'm still shocked the number of people I speak to who go, oh my God, thank you, Niraj, you're the first person to send me a voice note. Like, really? They've been around for
Yeah.
And I'll do it from simple things like wishing people a happy birthday. Again, it's a 30-second voice note. Elyse, I just wanted to wish you an absolutely amazing birthday. I know it's a Tuesday, it's a weeknight. You're probably not going to get a chance to go out drinking and have fun, but you know what? I hope you have an absolutely amazing birthday because at my age, I'm 50 now, but between 41 and 49, nobody celebrates my birthday. So I hope somebody really celebrates your birthday in style. Happy birthday, sending best wishes across the Atlantic to you. There you go. That's a 20-second voice note with so much love. It's got energy, it's got enthusiasm, it's got sincerity, and it's specific to you.
Wow.
One of the worst things you can do on LinkedIn, which unfortunately I wish didn't exist, is people pressing a button which goes, happy birthday, a generic AI button. My birthday this year, I lost count. I got about 1,000 messages and at least 960, 970 were generic. I didn't reply to them. I replied to 30 messages that were video messages, voice notes, and people actually making an effort to say, happy birthday, Niraj. I hope you and Rachel are well. I hope you and your family are, something better than just happy birthday. Again, standing out. So please use LinkedIn voice notes. Yesterday was quite nice because it was the 1st of January, 2023. I received quite a few videos from clients and from friends, and that was lovely. And of course, what did I do? I responded back. So I responded back shooting 30-second videos saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate making the effort. I'm sorry I've not shaved. I'm sorry I got my Bon Jovi sweatshirt on, but it's the 1st of January and I finished work, but I wanted to reply to you. So here I am in all my glory. This is my cat Mitzi. This is my other cat Rue. Here I am shaved. Happy New Year. So again, it's real. And it's sincere. But again, I mentioned the person's name. It's never a copy and paste job. I'm always very clear to mention a person's name in all my outreach because I want them to know this is not a copy and paste. This is me talking to you directly because people buy from people. Unless you're dealing with the Apples or the biggest companies in the world, people buy from people. So always keep that in mind whenever you're doing any kind of outreach. And that is why I always encourage voice notes. And if you're more extrovert, do video.
I love that so much. I love that so much. And that's why for me, I've never been a fan of ads. I've never been like, when I think about how I've grown and scaled my business, and maybe you can relate to this, it's like, it hasn't been automation. It hasn't been ads. It's been one-to-one human interactions. And I really I mean, there is a place for those things. But I can't tell you how many automated messages I get from people who are like, I don't want to say bad service providers, but I get automated messages from people that like, we fired vendors, we fired because they weren't following through what they're doing. It's like, hey, Elyse, it's so interesting the work you're doing in the world. Would love to connect and hear more about it. It's like, we let go of you. So anyway, all of that to say the human touch, the personal element, I think is tremendous. And I think it's the key to success. If you're a service provider, an entrepreneur, sales professional. So one quick question on that. How much time do you spend a day on LinkedIn right now?
I spend about 2 hours a day on LinkedIn.
2 hours a day.
So
Okay.
I will spend about 20 minutes to half an hour in the morning replying to messages.
Okay.
I will then spend about half an hour to 40 minutes at lunchtime doing a post and then replying to all the messages in that post. And then I will spend time in the evening learning, because learning is very important too. I'll look at what other posts other people are doing, not just sales related, but in sales is such an important topic, but it includes marketing, it includes copywriting, it includes communication, it includes how you speak. There's so many things involved in the sales process that most people don't consider. So I use LinkedIn as a big learning platform as well, because learning, as you can tell, I'm a massive reader, of course, and I read every day. But there's also different ways of learning. There's reading a book, there's listening to a podcast, there's reading content on LinkedIn. So I would probably spend almost as much as 2 hours. But again, it's all communicating, networking, building my personal brand and learning. So I'm there for a reason. What I'm not doing is mindlessly scrolling, because that is just a huge waste of time.
Totally.
It is.
Totally. Okay. So up to 2 hours a day. Morning is all responding. So it's inbound. And obviously if someone's just starting off, they're not going to have as much inbound. So that time may be more outbound, maybe like connection requests, building relationships. But then middle of the day is content creation. So you're creating, some of this is me selfishly getting coached on LinkedIn. I hope you don't mind. I figure if I have the question, our audience might have the question too. So are you doing content same day, or are you pre-planning and batching a bunch of?
I spend 60 minutes every Sunday writing content.
Got it.
And I'd probably say that twice a week, I just simply copy and paste it. Twice a week now, I just repurpose something from a year ago.
Okay.
And then once a week, I'll write something just that suddenly, because once a week, and running a business, quite often all these things will happen, thinking, this will actually make a really good post today.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. Now today was simply, I repurposed a post today from last year. That literally took me less than 60 seconds. And then I spent about 30 minutes replying to comments on it and thanking people for replying to comments on it. And then I had somebody want me to speak at their event. And I said, how much is that? They go, you'll speak for exposure. And I said, okay, you have 2,000 followers. Now I have 26,000 followers. What exposure are we talking about here? And they have it's really hard when people say dumb things on LinkedIn not to respond. I always look at it as a real test of my resilience. Just don't respond, because it's so easy to get triggered by people who are unreasonable. It is. And every now and again, I will say to somebody, look, you're an MD of a business. Your job title says MD. Why are you sending me this ridiculous email for? And I don't know you. Why are you asking me to comment in your post? Stop it. Please stop it. And you're another fitness coach. I've had 8 already today. Seriously, have you all been trained by Grant Cardone? You all stink. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop 10xing. Stop it. So every now and again, I'll just reply to somebody sarcastically, and every now and again I will go, thank you so much for your unsolicited email. I don't get enough of these a day. It really means a lot to me that you've made this much effort. So every now and again sarcasm gets the worst of me, but most of the time my emotions are in check.
We all get to the edge sometimes. Every single one of us. So shifting, so not a natural segue, but I do want to shift for just a moment to abundance mindset. So just with that, one of the things you teach and that you talk about, and I know that you do embody, is that just giving, right? So any words of wisdom around abundance mindset with prospecting, with building your brand, and just how that has influenced your success?
Absolutely. It's very important to remember in life, the more you give in the world, the more good that comes back to you. That is just a fact of life. You can call it karma, you can call it the law of attraction, but that is a fact of life. Now, what you shouldn't do is give to the world and then sit there going, okay, I'm just going to wait here for something good to happen. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
I've seen people do that. I see a lot of people, unfortunately, who read The Secret and then dream of good things to happen and then wonder why nothing's happening. Because guess what? You actually have to put in the work. And that's the big chapter that's really missing from The Secret. You actually have to put in the work. But I support, a lot of the work I get is from other people that have helped out. So at least once a week, I'll see somebody who's lost a job or been made redundant on LinkedIn. And I know what that's like. That's happened to me twice in my career. And it's a horrible experience. And I will look at their LinkedIn profile and connect with them. And I'll leave them a voice note to say, hi, I'm Niraj, you don't know me. I want nothing from you, but I see you're looking for work. I recommend you change your banner. In your about section, you've got 3 lines. Give me some context. Let me know who you are. Also, in your LinkedIn recommendations, the last one was 5 years ago. That means, in the perception of other people, you've done nothing in 5 years. I'm sure you have, but make sure you're asking for recommendations. And also, please start posting content. That's one of the best ways to get work on LinkedIn and have your voice heard. I hope this is helpful. Please come back to me in a week's time and let me know how you're getting on. Something as simple as that, I'll do at least once a week, sometimes more. When I have a personal friend or a former client that's lost work, I will introduce them to other recruitment agencies. Or I'll spend 10 or 15 minutes going through their LinkedIn profile. Again, I don't say, oh, by the way, can you buy my book? Or can you give me a shot on LinkedIn? I never say, by the way, I'd like a LinkedIn recommendation. I never do that, ever. You just do it because it's the right thing to do and it helps other people. And what I find is a week later, a month later, sometimes it's even 6 months later, that person will come back to me. Sometimes even it's a year later. And they'll come back to me and say, Niraj, I remember you helped me a long time ago. I've been promoted now and I've got a budget. So I'm going to recommend you to come and do some LinkedIn training or some one-to-one work with my team. Now, sometimes that works. And sometimes the companies say, forget it, we're not going to hire you. We already have somebody, in which case that's fine. But it's more that you made a difference in somebody's life. That's a huge thing to be able to do. It's also very, very good for your confidence as well. Yeah.
Wow. I love that so much. And it always comes back, right? It always comes back, sometimes through that person, sometimes through somebody else too, right? That's one of the things I found is you just never know. But I think I think that is one of the very best uses of our time, is going out and helping people who literally right now cannot do anything back for us.
And may never be able to help us in the future.
Right, exactly.
Just helping for the sake of helping, it just makes the world a better place. I had this thing I did for 6 months where I was a coffee shop and I'd pay for the person next to me.
Oh, I love that.
And the reaction was very interesting. Elderly people were very grateful. Men often didn't know what to say. Thank you. Women would often say, no, thank you, or I have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So you're doing something out of the goodness of your heart. And some people really appreciate it. Some people get confused by it, and some people say, hey, I'm already spoken for. I'm like, that's not why I bought you the coffee. I'm not buying you a drink because you're pretty. I'm buying you a drink because you're next in line. Okay. And when you do good in the world, it does confuse a lot of people because most people are so involved with themselves. They don't really take the time to think of others. Warren Buffett always says one of the most important things you can do every day is think. And because we live in a world where we're addicted to these phones, addicted to technology, addicted to these, addicted to technology, I turn this off 3 times a day when I'm working. And it's one of the best things I do. And it gives me time to really focus on another person. But then also half an hour a day I spend thinking.
I remember you mentioned that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's really important. Sometimes it does lead to napping, don't get me wrong. A lot of the time,
Einstein napped. That was part of his strategy, I think.
It's so good. And sometimes I'll just nap and nothing will happen. But a lot of the time I'm thinking. And it's much easier thinking with technology off. And it's much easier to do good things and be intentional when it's just you, a pen, and a paper. Never underestimate the importance of a pen and paper. It's really important, especially in today's technological world.
I totally agree. That's the first part of my day is getting up really early by myself, not looking at the phone for probably 4 or 5 hours in the morning.
Wow, that's brilliant. Well done.
Well, I get up early. So it's still kind of start of the day by the time I'm looking at it. But to your point, the best ideas come during that time, and having something to handwrite rather than write on your phone is key. So, this is so good. I know, Niraj, so there's a number of resources I want to connect people with if they want to get in touch with you. I know you also have your new book out, which is really exciting. So if you want to speak to that for a moment, so it's business growth. Tell me if this is right. Business growth, lessons learned from dating, divorce, and falling in love again, right?
Perfect. For those
Great
of you who are
title.
watching,
Awesome.
you can see the book here.
There we go.
It spent 6 days in the Amazon Top 100 under business, which I'm so proud of.
Huge, by the way, huge.
Huge. And the reviews have been fantastic so far, and I'm really honored by that. And this is my first time hiring a book team. So I hired an editor, a deputy editor, a copywriter, an indexer, for goodness sake, you know, a book designer. I really hired a team this time because I wanted it to look amazing. And it reads like a professional book, not because most self-published books out there, unfortunately, you can tell are self-published. They're pretty badly done and they're done cheaply. And I went all out with this because I wanted people to get so much value from it. And that was really important to me.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. So someone can go on Amazon or on your website, I'm assuming, and get a copy.
Yeah,
And check that out. Amazing. And then Niraj, just in terms of where else to connect with you, if someone wants to get in touch, if they want to hire you, how can someone do that?
Look, if you want to do better in LinkedIn, you want to do better in sales, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. If you're not on that LinkedIn that much, go to everybodyworksinsales.com. Have a look at my free resources section. There's loads of documents there, and just, I don't even need your email address. Just go ahead and download it and see if my work resonates with you, because it is very important it does that as well. You have to be able to connect with a person before you actually want to work with them. So go ahead and download, and most importantly, take action. That's what I care about.
Yeah. Again, it's doing things differently, right? You don't even have to give your email address to get these downloads. You just go and see if it resonates. So I think that's a testament to who you are and what you teach, which is do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Have the abundance mindset. So yeah, this has been such a great conversation. I've learned so much. Thank you for the, personal coaching on LinkedIn, as well as just what you embody in terms of that giver's mentality and sharing your story so vulnerably. And I think it's a really powerful model that anybody can follow to really, really achieve their goals and do good in the world too. So Niraj, thank you so much. Really, really great conversation, my friend.
No, it's a pleasure, Elyse. And look forward to talking later on this year and some various sales panels together. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Same here. Well, to you, my listener, go connect with Niraj. Send him a personal message, please, because you heard what you need to do on LinkedIn today. Go connect with him, check out his books, check out the resources on his website. We'll link everything in the show notes. So grateful to have you as a member of the She Sells community, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye for now.